This is the California Air Tools 8010 Ultra Quiet and Oil-Free Air Compressor. I can run it a few feet away, talk on the phone, and still hear every word without turning up the volume. I think of this as a shop-friendly, indoor-friendly compressor for people like me who care about noise, reliability, and simple upkeep. I work out of a small garage and sometimes in a basement space, and I need compressed air for nailing, for inflating, for the occasional airbrush, and for blowing dust off tools without waking up the whole house. That is the use case where this thing shines. If I were running big sanders or spraying cars every weekend, I would want a larger machine, but for everyday projects and light professional work, this hits a sweet spot. The physical design matters in daily use. The tank is steel and holds about 8 gallons, finished in a silver color that does not show scuffs as quickly as a painted bright color would. The handle is big and solid, and the wheels are real rubber, not toy plastic, so rolling across a garage floor or over a threshold feels stable. The footprint is compact, and at roughly 48 pounds it is not a featherweight, but with those wheels and that handle, I do not need to brace myself just to move it around. Carrying it up and down stairs is possible, though it starts to feel bulky if I do that a lot. The air line going to the tank is copper rather than plastic, and the main hose is steel braided. That gives me confidence about heat and durability, and it feels like a step above entry-level builds I have owned. The drain valve on the bottom uses a quarter-turn lever, which makes bleeding moisture at the end of the day a 2-second task instead of fighting a tiny twist screw. Little things like that decide whether I actually keep up with maintenance. With this one, I do. Setup was smooth. It arrived almost fully assembled. I attached the wheels and spun on the air filter. That was basically it. The instructions are serviceable, but if someone has never touched a compressor, they might want a quick how-to video for a visual. I noticed a scuffed gauge right out of the box and the plastic shield over it was missing. Shipping happens. It annoyed me for a minute. I grabbed a replacement locally, and I was back on track. That annoyance did not affect performance, but it is the kind of small hiccup that is worth mentioning. Firing it up the first time was a little surreal, because of the sound, or more accurately, the lack of it. California Air Tools rates this at around 60 decibels. In real life, that reads like a steady hum more than a bark. I used to have a pancake compressor that sounded like a tiny jet spooling up. With that old one, I would flinch when it kicked on, and I could not hear a thing for a moment. With the 8010, I can keep a playlist going or talk to someone standing next to me. After a long session, I do not have that fatigued feeling from noise. I value that more than I expected. It changes what hours I am willing to work and where I am willing to set up. Power-wise, the motor is rated at 1 horsepower and it is oil-free. Oil-free matters because I do not have to track maintenance intervals or keep a bottle of compressor oil on the shelf. There is no mess, and there is less to think about before a project. The pump uses a dual piston design that the company rates for more than 3,000 hours. I obviously have not clocked that many hours, but the startup feels consistent and the build does not give me rattly vibes. When it fills from empty, I see full pressure in around 2.5 minutes. Topping up from around 90 to around 120 pounds per square inch takes close to a minute. In practice, that means I am rarely waiting on it during normal work. It reaches pressure, shuts off automatically, and only cycles back on when I am actually drawing air. Air delivery is the other half of the story. At lower pressures, around 40 pounds per square inch, it can move about 3.1 cubic feet per minute. At a more common shop pressure like 90 pounds per square inch, it is around 2.2 cubic feet per minute. Those numbers translate to this. For nail guns, brad nailers, staplers, finish guns, and airbrushing, it keeps up without breaking a sweat. For tire inflation and blow gun work, it has plenty of punch, and the tank size lets me burst clean something off and get back to work. For tools that sip air here and there, I am never thinking about the compressor. For tools that gulp air constantly, I do notice shorter cycles. I put this unit through a mix of real tasks. I built a set of garage cabinets with a brad nailer and a stapler, and the compressor was a non-issue. Shots were consistent, the line pressure held, and the motor cycled quietly in the background when it needed to. I rigged a small pneumatic cylinder for a Halloween animatronic that dumps air quickly to give that jump effect. That is a higher demand scenario, and I could hear the motor come on more frequently, but the system still maintained pressure and the movement stayed snappy. I topped off a couple of car tires from the mid-30s to the mid-40s in pounds per square inch, and it did that without drama. The regulator responds predictably, so when I dial to a number, it lands there and stays put. The gauges are big enough to read at a glance from a few feet away, which is something I appreciate when I am mid-project. One of my favorite small wins is the drain. I tend to forget to drain tanks on louder, more annoying units, because by the end of the day I just want to leave the shop. With the quarter-turn lever on this tank, I slide a tray under, pop it open, and it is done. Moisture stays out of the air lines, and I feel better about the inside of the tank over the long term. The copper line and braided hose also seem to keep things cooler around the pump, and I can feel the difference in how secure the fittings are when I check them for leaks. I do not want to gloss over the limits. This is not a compressor for running a big air sander nonstop or a high-volume spray gun for a whole car panel. The tank is 8 gallons, and the delivery numbers are honest for that size. For high-demand tools, I would reach for something with a larger tank and more airflow. Also, while the unit is portable, it is not something I want to carry up 2 flights of stairs all day. Rolling across flat ground is easy. Stairs are a workout, and that shipping scuff on the gauge reminds me that packaging is not invincible. I sorted it quickly, but it was a blemish on an otherwise clean setup. For a specific use case, I spent a weekend installing trim and baseboards in a quiet townhouse. I brought this compressor inside, set it in a hallway, and used a finish nailer through a couple dozen rooms. I took calls with it running, which would be unthinkable with the old pancake unit I owned before. I did not get a single noise complaint, and at the end of each day, I drained the tank in seconds. That job made it clear what this machine is about. It supports the work, gets out of the way, and does not dominate the space with noise. There are a few smart touches that feel thoughtful. The automatic shut-off at full pressure means no babysitting. The easy rolling wheels and tall handle make a difference when I am moving around a crowded garage. The oil-free pump removes a whole category of maintenance and mess. The copper and steel braided lines feel like parts that will last, not corners cut to hit a spec sheet. None of these are flashy, but together they make the daily experience calmer and more predictable. When I step back, I see a compressor built for people who value a quiet shop, low maintenance, and honest performance for small to medium tasks. As someone who has moved from a loud bargain compressor that shook the walls and eventually failed, I feel relieved to have this as the background machine that just turns on, does the job, and lets me keep working. If I were a full-time auto tech running impact wrenches all day, I would go bigger. If I were painting full panels often, I would go bigger. For woodworking, for trim work, for inflating, for hobby builds, and for general garage projects, I trust this one. If this video helped, I would love it if you hit subscribe and drop a comment with your questions or your own shop experiences. Thank you for watching.